So for season 3, we got a few different weapon adjustments, and for the most part, not huge dramatic changes in the long range department. Obviously the Ram 7 got touched, but today's focus is primarily on the close range meta, and they've actually given us less options to choose from than we had before the update. Ideally, you want to kind of add more weapons to the loadouts, maybe have one a little bit more dominant, but a ton of viable options. I think they've kind of removed some more viable options today. Obviously, we got the Ram 9 gets a decrease from 30 down to 27, and this is a huge change. It basically makes it very weak, and it removes the strongest element it had. Obviously, they improved the sprint to fire time, which was an issue on the weapon, but that doesn't make up for the fact that you would get a ridiculously fast TTK within its first damage range with this gun, as long as you got one headshot. Now you need something like 3 headshots in the mix. So it's basically, you'll never get that fast TTK, and it falls somewhere around 650, which isn't great. AMR 9, we have the same thing happen. The max damage range, which is the closest, the min damage, which is the furthest, and then we got the near mid damage. So just right after that first damage drop off of like 20-ish meters, then we get into this one. Then they reduce the damage ranges. They decrease the sprint out fire time, which is huge. It definitely needed that, but they kind of nerfed it into the ground mostly. Still easy to use and stuff like that, but it does destroy the gun. Then we get Rival 9, doesn't get a buff, it definitely needs one. HRM probably needed a nerf out of more of the weapons than anything. It didn't get one. Striker gets a little bit of a nerf, not really a big issue though. These ones aren't like really going to be noticeable for the most part. Striker 9 gets a little bit of a range buff, which is cool because it was already good, and how they've changed the other ones, this actually moves up in the rankings. Still probably not as good as the HRM, or maybe one of the other weapons that we're going to talk about that got buffed near the end of last season, but we didn't really talk too much about, which we'll talk about in today's video. WSP 9, pretty solid all-around option, just a slow fire rate. And then they did these changes on like the MX9. It's like no one's using that. This isn't enough. The TTK is okay, sure, but the small mag just doesn't cut it. Lockman sub, this is not enough. This is not enough. They wanted to, I don't know if they're just doing this so we're like, ooh, they buffed the MW2 guns. It's just not enough. Bass P literally does almost nothing for this one. Sadly, I look at the kind of the numbers, I'm like, that doesn't really help. Barely viable, right? Like it's one of those things. One thing I'll briefly mention is I'll cover the new Horus data, because I'm probably not gonna do a dedicated video. It's not really good enough. It sucks in hardcore. It sucks in multiplayer. It sucks in Warzone. And it's probably okay in zombies, right? Like just because it has an insanely fast fire rate. But in terms of damage, nothing special. Around a 670 TTK. As you can see right here, you need some headshots in the mix to get a faster TTK, but it still just feels like a pea shooter, especially with the 48 round mag. This was something that definitely needed a 60 if it's going to have such low damage at close range. And one thing I wanted to do is kind of bring back some of the information set up this way so you can kind of see the comparison of why I think things standing out. We got the Jack Renetti, which is the conversion kit on the Renetti, the pistol. Only thing sucks about this is you can't go and buy it from the buy station. It has to be like, you have to get this from the loadout. You can kind of see how this lays out. This is definitely the hard meta with the HRM. This one's kind of gone under the radar. It did get buffed on March 22nd. So it's kind of just been sitting under the radar. Not a lot of people have been talking about it because it is a secondary. You can kind of see its first damage range pretty solid, and its TTK after that is pretty solid as well. And it doesn't have another damage drop off after this. Literally, it's going to have 630 into infinity. Obviously, you're not going to have the best bullet velocity or whatever the case is. And then I started to incorporate this here. I just wanted to kind of look at the damage per mag section. I know this is something I used to do before, but I've converted it to a shots to kill on average, and then kind of what that equates to in downs if you were 100% accurate, which isn't really realistic. So I put 40% because that's close range. You'll probably get 40% if you thirst it down, those types of things, your pre-fire, all that stuff. This is kind of what you can expect to get from the gun. And only 2 of these come out at over 2 downs per mag. These ones are pretty close, right? And these ones not, a little bit worse. So you kind of have that there. HRM, still pretty much as good as it was before the update. 612, super reliable. I think they don't want to touch it for this. I thought they should have buffed a lot of these guns and other guns to kind of meet in the middle, so that it would be around a 630 TTK or 600 TTK for a lot more guns. And unfortunately, they didn't go that way. They actually nerfed some of these. The Ram 9, not great up close, and that only goes to 10 meters. Before it was getting like a 500 TTK because you can get the headshot, but now it just gets a slower TTK. And then once you get the drop off, nothing special. You can see they all kind of drop off to around 700, which is fine. And that kind of makes sense for a damage drop off. This should all be around 15 meters, 12 meters, whatever. It's where you're getting a lot of engagements. WSP9, pretty solid. It does have a little bit of open bolt delay, so up close, it might cost you, but the damage per mag is pretty good. The number of downs you'll be able to get. The new FJX Horus, you can see not particularly great, but the AMR basically got gutted. I don't know. It doesn't feel this terrible in game. Obviously, it's floor loot, but it's pretty bad at this point. I hope that this isn't accurate. Maybe they're going to revert something, because that just doesn't seem right that it's that busted. So we'll go ahead and go through some of the quote unquote meta loadouts right now. I think these will change pretty quickly, because I think enough people are frustrated with this, even though Rebirth Island's playing well, ranked seems to be okay, just pretty sweaty, a little harder to regain on a smaller map. But we'll kind of see how the things play out. So I'll go ahead and include the FJX just because I'm probably not going to do a dedicated video. If they buff it, cool. You'll at least have the loadout. Save it for whenever it is. Really not worth leveling unless they decide to buff it for a lot of the different reasons. This is kind of the loadout I went with. I'm really liking the Mark III reflector. Anytime I get the WSP9 off floor loot, it comes with this optic. It's a blue dot. It's pretty nice. I think that's what they use in the CDL for their MCWs. That's kind of what I've been enjoying more, instead of a NIDAR or anything like that where it's a slate reflector or whatever. Again, it has a little bit of shake. I'm not a really big fan of. It shoots marshmallows. It feels like that in game, and the mag just doesn't cut it, in my opinion. For something like trios, it's just not great. And you're not really going to see a lot of people use it beyond the first day to make content or whatever. AMR also got quite a hit nerf, so we'll go ahead and cover that, but I don't really think it really has a niche anywhere anymore. Maybe still sniper support, because it is an SMG that they slightly buffed on the sprint to fire time. Maybe you could take one of those attachments and put it towards something else. But in general, this is kind of how you'd build it out. Pretty straightforward. I am a big fan of suppressors, so that's why I generally like to use those in most of my builds. And that's kind of how that one lays out. Then we do have the Ram 9, which again, this one's not like in the best spot, but you can see there's the Recon Comb if you want your screenshot. And then we also go ahead and check this out. So I've been experimenting with different builds on this one. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's really worth using if you're in a sweaty lobby. If you get easy lobbies and you can use whatever, cool, more power to you, explore more options. But the reality is, if the lobby's sweaty, all your opponents are going to be using the top 2 or 3 guns, and it makes it a little bit tricky. You have fun with floor loot when they only have 2 plates, cool. But that's kind of how that goes. Then we get the WSP9, which, like I said, is the next one there. Pretty solid. Like I said, I've changed this up a little bit because I changed the optic. I don't like the iron sights on this gun or the new SMG. Again, this one fires slow. Something you got to deal with. Overall, I mean, it feels okay. Reload's not crazy, but you do get a good number of downs. In reality, you could probably get 3 downs pretty comfortably with it if you don't go for the thirst. Maybe you're using throwing knives, and then this one will work pretty good for you. Then we go ahead and go over here to the Striker 9. I've never really been a big fan, but now that those other things got nerfed, as long as you don't run into the top 2 guns, this gun will do wonders for you. I think the mobility is pretty good. You do get to manage it out pretty good range. You can see I've gone again with that optic. Pretty straight vertical recoil. Just got to kind of pull down. I've not really spent a ton of time playing with this gun in terms of actually like, oh, is it viable in competitive meta? I think it feels good. I've used it quite a bit. Obviously, I got the zombie camo or whatever. But now that the other ones have been nerfed, it might be worth giving this one a try. If you haven't already, I know a lot of people have been loving this one as an off-meta, viable, top-tier competitor for a while now. It's not like it's a secret gun. We've known about it for quite a while. Then we get over here to the HRM, which I think is still kind of the all-around best SMG that you can buy from the buy station. That is the key, because you can't buy the Renetti from there. So pretty much the same build. One of the biggest differences we've done with the build is before we used to have the Thorn Barrel. We've swapped that out to go ahead and go with the high grain rounds. If you want a little bit better range, because this thing has been touched in the range department, you could go for the Princeps, which gives you a lot better range and a lot better velocity. It will slow you down a little bit, and we'll go ahead and still get rid of that. You can go for the high grain, and this will give you the clean iron sights. So it's either one of those builds. Obviously, if you want the Grau iron sights, there we go. Hopefully they bring the HRM 5.56 in a future season, hopefully like season 4 or 5, and then that'll be the Growl that we know and love from Warzone 1, Modern Warfare 2019. So either one of those builds is great. And then we also have the fast TTK Renetti. This one kind of slipped through because of the things I mentioned earlier. You can't buy it from a buy station, but it did get a huge buff on March 22nd, and it's kind of just been sitting there under the radar. And I think people are kind of, anytime a new season hits, people are like, oh, let me experiment this, let me experiment with that. And they're like, ooh, this is actually pretty good. So unfortunately though, the big problem with this gun is it doesn't have all the various optics. You can go with the NIDAR, but it's missing quite a bit of the optics that you probably want. The glassless, I don't think it's in here. Maybe it is. I could be wrong. I don't think so. Maybe I'm blind. But overall, that's kind of how it goes. You can kind of use what you want. Have fun with it. If you want iron sights, it is a little bit obstructive, but you can see this thing is pretty crazy, especially up to the ranges we talked about. Let me know what you're enjoying in Season 3. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.